Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Terry Fletcher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Steel City Underground Week 1 of the 2022 football season. My name is Terry Fletcher, which means this is the new season of What the Football, or WTF. And here we go. I'm actually excited for this week. Talk about a crazy Week 1. I mean, it's not a bad Sunday to start off the 2022 season. We had 7 game-tying or go-ahead scores in the final 2 minutes of regulation, and obviously we had some games go into overtime, including the Steelers, which I'll get to. But the Browns spoiled Baker Mayfield's revenge attempt, as we heard about all week, with their rookie blasting a 58-yard game winner at Carolina. A.J. Brown instantly made his presence felt in the Eagles' offense, guiding Philadelphia past Detroit with 10 catches for 155 yards. But let's face it, and this was a good WTF moment, the Ravens and the Jets, they are who we thought they were. Lamar Jackson had a victory over a very inefficient Joe Flacco-led operation over there in New York. And the Colts and Texans, oh man, let me get to that one. They mucked up the AFC South standings, and why? Because it was a tie. Well, it wasn't just any tie. It was the coach playing for a tie. What is up with that? Talk about a WTF moment. I'm like, wait a minute. It's 4th and 1. He's got over 20 seconds left on the clock, and he punts it. And it's not just that the coach called for the punt. This is Lovie Smith, a coach that is coming back into the league, a black coach that wants to again make a name for himself. And I say that with love because I actually love Lovie, but I do not love that decision. And so I'm just so surprised that that was the outcome. Basically, you're telling people my team is trash and I trust basically nobody. And so I'd rather play for a tie than play for a win. Can you imagine Mike Tomlin doing that on purpose? He's a guy that would go for it on 2-point conversion to win in the last 3 seconds. Oh, wait, he did back in the day. Look what the New York Giants coach did. You're just like, whoa, he's not playing, for it to tie to go into overtime. He's actually playing for a win with that 2-point conversion. And he's a brand new coach this year. So it was very surprising to me in overtime when you have an opportunity and the time to potentially kick a game winner and you don't trust your team. That is just amazing to me. So that was a big WTF moment for me. But let's start with the Cowboys, shall we? Everybody always bets on them. Why do you bet on them? Do not bet on the Cowboys. They are overrated. I mean, they lose to the Buccaneers, they lose Dak, and let's face it, they lose hope, and that is not an overreaction. 1 week ago, even before Dallas lost Dak Prescott to a hand injury, they don't have a playoff team. They're basically in the cellar right now at 0-1. And now their franchise quarterback, who I also think is extremely overrated, is now going to miss a couple of weeks because he fractured his hand. It was hit in the process of passing the ball. And so he had to have surgery. And so at this point, it's like, you know what? Better luck's next year, boys. Sorry. Beyond the devastating Dak injury and coaching issues, well, let's talk about Tom Brady. Okay, so yes, I know he's the GOAT. Yes, I know he's 145 years old. 45 years old. See, I'm a little snarky today. Well, he won. I mean, let's face it, 19 points was enough for them to win, but he had Leonard Fournette. I mean, that's who basically did it. And it's just crazy looking at their win over the Cowboys because it was just, Cowboys 3 points. And Mike McCarthy, I'm not really understanding why they keep him, but he's the yes man for Jerry Jones, so there you go. But, Dak, his fourth quarter injury, before any of that, he had a 47.2 passer rating. I mean, that's it. Who's going to win their division? Philadelphia. That's just my guess. Dolphins destroy Patriots. I think the Bill Belichick era is clearly over. I mean, Brady leaves and they don't really do much. So, you know what? The Patriots, we're getting them in, I say we, as in the Steelers, we're getting them next week. And I think it'll be pretty competitive. I think we'll do okay, so we'll see. But it's just interesting to see what's going on over there in the AFC East. They have a new coach in the Dolphins. He actually, to me, looks like a piano teacher. And one of his players, one of his really big linemen, tried to hug him, and it looked like he was saying, "Stop, you're squishing me." So that was a funny WTF moment to me. But I don't know what's going to happen with BB because he is just not doing well over there. But the one thing that was kind of funny in the game of, let me kind of go back a little bit. Funny, not ha-ha funny, but let's face it, when Tom Brady gets sacked a little bit, those of us who are diehard Steeler fans, don't we chuckle just a little bit? We do. Micah Parsons basically tackled him a couple of times for some sacks. And when you're 45 years old or 145, what's the difference when you're playing NFL? It's interesting to see what happens. And they didn't get any kind of passer roughing the passer or anything like that. And there was one where I actually thought they should because there was two guys that went on him and the ball was clearly already gone. So here is one that I just find interesting. So Aaron Rodgers came out this past week and said, and I'm going to quote, "Psychedelic drugs led to the best season of my career because it's hard to pronounce, ayahuasca, a psychoactive tea containing hallucinogenic drug DMT, helped him unconditionally love himself." Well, did he love himself this week with the 23-7 loss to Minnesota and Kirk Cousins? I'm not thinking he did because he was yelling at coaches, yelling at players, yelling at anybody who passed by him. But you know what? His first week and relaxed speech, well, he doesn't play in preseason. He doesn't get in sync with his players. And honestly, I'm really glad we dodged that bullet in Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens to the 38-year-old quarterback that now loves himself, if he didn't before, but didn't have enough of his hallucinogenic drugs. And apparently that's not on the list for the NFL for enhancing drugs. Apparently it doesn't work. So we'll see what happens there. But really, WTF, what the football, Aaron? Get it together, dude. Shoot. The Bears in a raining mess. I don't know if you saw what was going on in Chicago, but slip and sliding and 4 to 5 inches of rain. It was actually kind of funny, but they ended up winning 19-10. So that was an actual pretty good game when you're looking at what's going on in Chicago. The Giants win, and this is where I'm coming back to the 2-point conversion. Now, Bullock missed a field goal for the Titans, and so now instead of a tie, their new coach went for the win, and 21-20, 6 years since they've had an opening week win. Can you imagine? So that was actually a great win for them, and I'm really happy for them because they've had a struggle over the last few years. So missed field goals, extra points, kickers everywhere. Oh my goodness, it was just brutal. But let's talk Steelers. And I know you've already probably heard Joe and Zach and the gang talk about Steelers, but here's my take on what happened in the Steelers game. And there's some funny parts because guess what? I'm on the West Coast, and so we had the CBS feed. It was the national game until it wasn't. So all of a sudden, we've got 3.5 minutes left. We're in overtime, and CBS announces, due to contractual obligations, we're going to switch to the Chargers game. Yes, California teams take precedence over the national game, even if you want to be watching the Steelers. So we had to go. We have NFL ticket. We tried to find it on there, still blacked out. Luckily, Red Zone had it up on what was going on. But as we get on the Red Zone, all of a sudden we're down the field and we didn't know how. I didn't find out till about an hour later that we had Deontay Johnson made a fabulous left-handed over his head catch, toe tapped in for all this 21 yardage. So shout out to Deontay, who sometimes is not my favorite because of drops, but that was a catch that nobody could make except for him. So that was crazy. But let's talk about our game. Oh my goodness. So, the other thing with the CBS feed is they did not show the first field goal that Boswell kicked. The cameraman couldn't find it apparently, so he was, I don't know what he was looking at, maybe a girl in the stands, who knows. But he was not looking at the Boswell field goal. So CBS kind of failed us on the West Coast a little bit. But here's what's really kind of sad and happened in the game, and this is definitely a WTF because no media pundit picked the Steelers to win. Of course, we were going against Super Bowl appearance Joe Burrow and Cincinnati. But Joe did not play more than 5 minutes in the preseason. And I know a lot of coaches don't play their star players in the preseason. I know Ben got very little time when he was with us because they don't want them to get hurt, right? Well, if you are trying to get in sync with your players, trying to make sure that your offensive line is protecting you, you got to get in there a little time. And what did the Steelers do? We saw Mitch Trubisky, we saw Kenny Pickett, and we saw Mason Rudolph all get pretty equal time on the field in all three games, which helped us because Burrow had 7 sacks. Oh my gosh, our defense was on fire. 5 turnovers. I mean, they were intercepting. I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick, talk about a leader. And fumble recoveries. And also, they lost their long snapper. Now, this is where the tides turned. You never know how important a long snapper is as far as how accurate they are, not pitching it too high, not pitching it too low, making sure that the person receiving it can turn the laces perfectly. Well, they had to use a tight end, and then they had a missed field goal. They had a missed extra point. It was just crazy. And we just had so many things. I can't tell you how many times we're like, okay, well, they won. Nope. Or, oh my gosh, we're going to win. Nope. Doink off the crossbars for Chris Boswell. But the win took it at the last minute. But it was a crazy game. And finally, and I think it was the last minute and a half of overtime, we actually did come down. They had a really bad penalty. We came down the field and 23-20. We won. Oh my gosh, what a crazy win. Now, we did lose TJ Watt for a little bit of the season. You probably heard he has a partial torn pectoral muscle, and so we're looking at probably a month there. But luckily, Najee Harris, our running back, his injury doesn't look as bad, so it looks like we may lose him maybe 1 game, maybe 2. It's hard to say, but that was quite the game. I rewatched it later that night, and I still can't believe we won that game. It was just so crazy. Obviously, Pat Mahomes is just as good as Josh Allen, who also had a heck of a game last Thursday. Mahomes was the 5 touchdown guy. They absolutely clobbered Arizona. Duh. I mean, you knew that was going to happen. But let's talk about the highlighter game. And I talk about that because Seattle uniforms, it looks like green highlighters are out there on the field. Well, they beat Denver 17-16. After trying for a 6. Okay, so here's what happened. So it was back and forth. I didn't think Russell Wilson, who's now in Denver, had a great game. And, he wanted to prove something coming back in Seattle. But first of all, it was really loud. Even watching it on TV, it was really loud. I'm like, gosh, it is annoying loud. Where you wanted to turn down the volume, but then you couldn't hear it if you did that. But the crowd, that, like they say, the 12th man, it was crazy. Well, what happened is that there was a 4th and 5 at the very last 20 seconds of the game. And instead of trusting Russell to get that extra 5 for a first down and at least get closer, give it to Russell Wilson. If he doesn't run for it, he throws it to somebody. I mean, his percentages of making that, the analytics, are going to be a lot better than what they ended up doing, which is trying for a 64-yard field goal, which would have been the second longest in NFL history. So the percentages aren't there. And he basically let the clock wind down for another 10, 15 seconds. And even Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were like, what are you doing? And so he didn't try for the first down. Obviously, the 64-yard field goal was missed. And Geno Smith beat Russell Wilson. That's all I can say. And so it was 17-16 Seattle. And they just extended Russell Wilson without him playing even 1 game, $250 gazillion in his contract, something like that. And so I'm just so surprised when coaches make these decisions and they don't trust the person they have at center. They don't trust your quarterback. Why give him all that money? Why bring him into Denver if you don't trust him in the clutch moments of the game? That's the WTF for me. I don't understand that. Makes absolutely no sense to me. So between Houston and that mess, I don't get it. So that's kind of where I was at with a lot of the weekend, but I'm still reeling from the Steeler game, which was fantastic. And I'm so excited. I just can't wait to see what happens next week. And I hope everybody else is too. So everyone, make it a great day and make it a great rest of your week. And thank you for listening to the Steel City Underground WTF podcast.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.